So it's your employment taxes after it was recategorized, not your employees you withheld and didn't pay.
Right. It's money that I paid myself as an engineer in business for myself, being someone who's licensed in 12 states, makes all my own decisions, sets my own schedule. In fact, if I was an employee, I'd probably be fired by now because I'm so busy with my legislative work, I don't think any employer would tolerate my schedule.
Well, that clarifies that issue quite a bit. I haven't seen that out there. Anything else on that issue you'd like the voters to know?
Only that it's something that's being spun with half-truths, and you know, please visit my website and take a look at what I've got there and try to determine what the truth is for yourself.
Great. So people can read your book to get a good feel, an exact feel of where you stand. Talk about the book and basically distill the position that you have and what you found that has led you to this fight.
Well, I'm a real fan of the Founding Fathers and that period of the War of Independence and American history. And my family's from Philadelphia. I went to graduate school at the University of Pennsylvania, right there.
From Philadelphia.
Oh, good. Well, I've been to most of the War of Independence historical sites, and anyway, so that's a real passion of mine. And we need to remember that America was founded not because some strong-arm man took control and set up his regime. America was founded when the representatives of the people got together, drafted a legal document which outlined their grievances against the king and their purposes in creating a new government, and they signed that document. They signed what amounts to a legal document that really created our nation. And in that legal document, it talks about how government gets its authority from the consent of the governed. And one of the issues that we complained about King George in the Declaration of Independence was for imposing taxes on us without our consent. And so what I wanted to do in my research was to figure out what it was that the American people consented to. What was it that Congress was trying to do when it debated the 16th Amendment back in 1909, sent that amendment out to the states for ratification, and then the people told their various state legislatures to ratify that amendment. And so I looked at the historical record, and you know, the Supreme Court tells us that in order to figure out what it was that the income tax is trying to do, what the meaning of the word income was, that we needed to look in the minds of the people as they debated the income tax amendment. And that's a quote right out of one of the early Supreme Court cases on the income tax. And so that's what I did. I tried to figure out what was in the minds of the people. And really, our government doesn't get its authority from the law, the statutes, or the regulations, or from their badge, or from not even from the Constitution. It gets its authority from the consent of the people. And when we look at the Constitution really just sets up the mechanism by which we govern ourselves, but the spirit that we use to implement the Constitution comes from the Declaration of Independence. And so when I go back into the historical record, I don't try to determine what the people were thinking. I try to discover what they were thinking. See, if I determine it, that somehow leaves the decision making up to me. All I can do is discover what they were thinking and deal with the facts that are back there in the historical record.
And that's how the book came to be.
That's how the book came to be, right. And then some people say, well, gee, if you're a Christian, shouldn't you do whatever the government asks you to do? One of the most well-known verses in the New Testament on taxation is when Jesus got asked the question, is it right to pay taxes to Caesar? And Jesus took a coin and he says, whose likeness is on that coin? And they said, Caesar's. And he said, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And on the other side of that coin, it was a denarius, was a picture of one of the Roman gods. And so what he was talking about was a jurisdictional issue. Give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and give to God the things that are God's. And somewhere there's a boundary line between those two, and that's what my book is about. My book is about trying to determine what the jurisdiction of the income tax is, what is it that belongs to Caesar, and what is outside of that jurisdiction.
And what you found was that income did not mean wages.
Income did not mean everything that's changing hands. In fact, the people back in the 1909 period, and when the income tax amendment was ratified, or at least purportedly ratified in 1913, no one was debating whether or not this thing was going to apply to wages. It wasn't even in people's thinking. It was completely outside of the debate. What they were after was a way to lower the tariff, which would indirectly impose a tax on consumer goods. By lowering the tariff, they were going to give a tax break to wage earners, and they were going to shift some of that tax burden onto what they called accumulated wealth. That was the wealth of the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts, and they were going to tax the profit from that wealth in the form of an income tax. And it wasn't a soak the rich scheme at all, because the very wealthy were paying virtually nothing in taxes, yet were receiving huge benefits from government. Benefits to protect their property, benefits to protect their investments overseas with the United States Navy and the United States Army, benefits for resolving their controversies in the court systems, which they really weren't paying to support. And so it was just a way to make them pay for the benefit they were receiving and to lower the tax burden on the wage earners and give the wage earners a tax break.
So you recently introduced a bill around involving the state income tax. Can you explain that?
Yes, I will explain that. And there's two goals in introducing this bill. The first goal is it pursues my passion, if you will, to return our taxation to the plan that the Founding Fathers had, where most of our taxes would be voluntary, only some of them would be mandatory taxes. And I frankly think the tax on our wages and our salaries is a tax on our right to exist, because you cannot exist unless you earn money to put a roof over your head and clothes on your back and food on your table. And when we're taxing the money that we go out and make to do just that, we're really paying a fee to exist. And if we're doing that, we really don't have a right to exist. So I also worry about the income tax. It's too intrusive. We're basically witnesses against ourselves in violation of the Fifth Amendment. There's searches on ourselves. We confess to our own income, which I think violates the Fourth Amendment. But the other reason I want to introduce this bill is because we've got to be aggressive in turning the Idaho economy around, and we've got to bring in companies from around the nation to go do business, to come to Idaho and to do business in Idaho. And I think ratcheting back on our income tax system and making Idaho one of the most freest states in the union is going to do that. And I think this bill is vital to reviving the Idaho economy. And we're going to have to be aggressive, because we're not doing very well economically, not in our state and not in our nation. And if we want to ramp up the Idaho economy, we're going to have to attract more business to our state.
And what does the bill actually do?
It's House Bill 454. And what the bill does is it says that the cost basis of your wages is equal to what you get paid for your wage, as opposed to the current system, which says the cost basis of your wages is zero. In other words, your time is completely worthless, and anything you get paid for your time is a gain or a profit, and therefore is taxable as income.